Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I've got the wonderful Gary Allen from the Allen's Investigates series, and we're going to talk about his book, the In Search of the Swan. That's right, isn't it, Gary? In Search of the Swan?
It is in Search of
Yeah.
the Swan, yeah.
And it's really weird because when we started discussing we were going to do this little show, that very day I went to, I can't remember which river, and I saw 9 swans go by. It was just so lovely. I've never seen that many before. But thank you for
No,
coming on and doing and discussing your book, which I love. I haven't quite finished, but it has everything I
no.
like in it. Parapsychology, psychic gifts, John Dee, the Templars, the Growl. I could go on about all these subjects, but
Yeah.
maybe we could start with when did the book come out?
Well, the book originally came out in 2012, but it's been updated since then and had a few additions to it. So a lot's happened since then, an awful lot's happened since then. So, and of course, the learning has been a lot greater since then as well. So, yeah, so that's why I updated it and put a new version out there. See, so and I've also got two other books, which is um, Thinking Man, which is my philosophy, and Dead Poet's Pen, which is some of the poetry I've channeled. So, yeah, they're also available. So,
Oh, okay, because I didn't realize it was channeled poetry. I have a lot of friends that like that kind of thing, so they will go towards that. And I like
yeah,
the Thinking Man, so maybe I need to get that one next, and we'll do a show.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's all, yeah, it's all come from out the extraneous source, shall we say? Yeah, I just get inspired and then I write it. So, yeah, but it all started many years ago, about 30 years ago, and I basically got up one evening and I really felt something needed to happen in my life. So anyway, in the morning I went downstairs and I had this overwhelming desire to write. I couldn't believe it. It was really strong. So what I did, I went to the drawer and got a pen and paper out, and within a space of a couple of minutes, I'd written 260 words. And when I read it back, it appeared that someone was talking to me. And I thought, what's all this about? So I phoned my mate Dean up and I said, oh, Dean, I said, you're not going to believe what's happened to me. I said, I just picked the pen and paper up and I said, I started writing and no pause, no punctuation, no grammar. And I've got 260 words and it appears that somebody's talking to me. So Dean, anyway, he started laughing and he said, oh, I'll come over and have a look at this, he said. And anyway, when he come over, he knocked on the door and I opened the door and in he came. And for some strange reason, I didn't know why, but I just grabbed his left shoulder and all of a sudden he started to move it in a clockwise and anti-clockwise direction. And I said, what are you doing? He said, what did you just do? And I said, nothing. Why? I said, I don't know why I grabbed your shoulder. And he said, well, tell you what, Gary. He said, I busted my arm in karate many years ago. And he said, I've never been able to move it above shoulder right. So that was my first experience of healing. And anyway, he said, let's have a look at your writing. So I showed him the writing and I read it to him. And he said, that's not you, Gary. He said, do you think you could do it again? And I said, oh, I don't know. I said, I don't know. So I got some more paper and straight away I started writing again and somebody was talking to me. And then my friend Dean said, could you read it to me? It was about another 200 odd words again. So he said, can you read it? So I read it to him. And he said, I said, come to a bit. And it said that your wife, Dean, said she had a doctor's appointment yesterday. And he spat all the coffee all over the floor. And I wasn't best pleased because I had a cream carpet at the time anyway. But he said, how do you know that? And I said, well, I don't. He said, are you having an affair with my wife? He really thought that because
Oh,
I said, but what makes you think that then? He said, because she had a doctor's appointment yesterday. And anyway, he phoned her up and he spoke to her and he said, when was the last time you saw Gary? And she said 5 years ago. So that basically how it started. And I never heard the words at the time. I just wrote it down. And some people say, well, was it automatic writing? Well, it wasn't because I had total control of the pen and paper. So, and then gradually, anyway, after a period of time, I got so much into this. I used to do it every single day. And every single day they would tell me something different. They would tell me to go to places things about my life, and these things would come true. So then they told me I would start to write philosophy and poetry, and that's what happened. And then eventually I started hearing the words. So basically, there was me as an East Ender, and I suddenly started hearing words like "most beauteous the stars, astronomy speaks, heavens abide the twinkled dust, eternities roll thy favoured tongue, disenchanted arrows of petulance rear a cankered head." And so I started to write stuff like that, and it would come so quickly that in a time it took basically a minute, I would have the perfect piece constructed from start to finish. And there's no no pause, no punctuation ever, and it's just flows, you know. And so this really got me, you know, fascinated with it all. And I didn't have a clue what it was all about at the time. And people were saying to me, "Well, you should, you know, it's some sort of a mystical gift, some sort of psychic gift you got there." And anyway, so what I decided to do was I went and met a couple of people, and I never read a book in my life, you know, never didn't do particularly well at school, but that was because I couldn't really be bothered. But yeah, so it started to come, and every day I would write, and then I would get the most wonderful philosophy come through me. And basically, I started to realize that I was being re-educated, and that's what was happening to me, you know. So from someone who never really learnt much at school, I suddenly was getting interested in classical music and philosophy and the poetry. And one day I started to write, and you know, I was getting another message, and they said to me, "You've got to go to 33 Belgrave Square." And I lived in Essex at the time, so I thought, I don't even know where Belgrave Square is. All I know is Belgrave Square is in London. And anyway, they said, "Well, you've got to get there within an hour and a half." So anyway, so what I did, I got on a train and went to London, and I asked someone where, you know, don't know where Belgrave Square is. And they led me to Belgrave Square, and I found number 33. And as I walked towards the door, I couldn't believe it. It was open. And I thought, well, there I go in there. So I walked up some steps, and I went in there, and there was some bloke behind the counter. And he said to me, "Welcome to the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain." So that was a right shocker for me. And I thought to myself, well, what am I going to tell him? And then the next minute, two girls walked in. They were twins. And one of them said to the other one, "Who's the medium on today?" And I said, "Well," I said, "maybe I can help you. What do you need to know?" So anyway, they asked me a couple of things, and I told them, and they said, "Wow, that's amazing. You're so accurate with your information." And they said, "Let's go downstairs and have a cup of tea." Well, I had my writings with me, see. So as we go downstairs, and I've been told that I was going to meet someone, and I thought it was these two girls. But as we went downstairs and looked in the tea room down there was one man sitting on his own, right? An elderly gentleman. And I thought, I've come to see him. That's the guy I've come to see. So the girls was pushing him, or pushing me, and saying, "Go and show him your writing." So anyway, I said, "Would you mind if I sit next to you?" And he said, "Not at all, dear boy." And the girls were saying, "Oh, show him your writings." And he said, "What's all this about your writings?" And as he said that, I got a name in my head, Euler. So I said to him, "I've got the name Euler. Who's Euler?" And he stopped, and he said, "Do I know you?" I said, "No." He said, "Have I ever seen you?" I said, "No." He said, "Did you know my wife?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, Euler is the name of my wife who died 16 months ago." And he said, "I'm just astounded." And I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "My name's Ronald." And I said, "Well, I was told I was going to meet someone by the name of Ronald, not in that particular writing, but before that, I was told I was going to meet someone called Ronald, and we'd be great friends." Well, anyway, we did become great friends. And he was a friend of John Four and Sheila Hancock. You remember John Four from the Sweeney, and Sheila Hancock, who's a well-known actress. And anyway, basically, so we developed a great friendship, and I used to read him my poetry when it came through. And one day I read him that "most beauteous of stars, astronomy speaks," and he said, "That sounds like Shakespeare." And I was so uneducated at the time, and I said, "Who's Shakespeare?" I had no idea, and I was 33. I didn't know who Shakespeare was. And then he said, "Let me read you a sonnet." And I said, "What's a sonnet? I don't know what a sonnet is." He said, "Well, it's a 14-line poem." So anyway, he gets the sonnet out and he said, "Let me read this to you." So he read me Sonnet 144. Two loves I have of Shakespeare and Two loves I have of Comfort and Despair by William Shakespeare, right? And when he read that to me, I thought, this is the path I have to be on. It's about Shakespeare. And that led me later on to John Dee, the Knights Templars, and that started my whole journey. And then one day, these extraneous source voices said to me, "You're going to write a book, and it's going to be called In Search of the Swan." And I thought, what the hell am I going to write a book about? And anyway, many years later, I had a friend called Sheila, and Sheila was a wonderful, wonderful soul. And we used to go everywhere. We used to go visit Leicester Square, see the Jean Cocteau mural, and we went to see Knights Templar places and everything. And one day she said to me, "Gary," she said, "we must go to the Philosophical Society of Great Britain." And I said, "Why are we going there?" She said, "I don't know," but she said, "We just have to go. We've got to go." So anyway, we went there. And as we walked into the room, it was filled with books. I don't know if you've ever been there, but there's books everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, piled high, piled high. So I went and got a ladder, and I put the ladder up against the back wall, climbed up the steps, and I pulled out one book. I didn't pull out any more than one. I pulled out one book. It was by C.W. Ledbetter, who's a Freemason. I opened it up at the page where it said that the swan was Hamza from the Hindu word, meaning the third great step of spiritual enlightenment. So then I knew that my journey was the third great step of spiritual enlightenment. And so then then after a series of amazing stories, I wrote the book called In Search of the Swan. So that's how it all came about, you know. I've had so many experiences, phenomenal experiences, which people can read about in the book. They're just extraordinary, mind-blowing.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like an adventure, but it's a true adventure. It's real life.
Yeah,
and but it's like,
yeah, of course. And as you know, it led me to my wife, which is another amazing story. You know, I don't know what stories you want me to tell, but I've got so there's so many. Oh my word! You know.
Well, I did want to ask you, what do you think? Because obviously they're not saying to you, "This is me," or this is whatever Bill speaking to you. They're quiet who they are, but you assume, do you, that I'm gathering that they're people that have passed over.
Well, yeah, that's and the reason I believe that, there's a couple of reasons really. One is when I stayed at Ron's one night, and his wife had obviously died, but I stayed at Ron's, and he said, you can't go in her bedroom because it's absolutely chocker up there. He said, so you can lay on the floor and see if you can get a good night's sleep. So I did. It was freezing cold, but I eventually got to sleep. And I got woken up about, I think it was about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sitting bolt upright and I'm looking in at the ceiling, and I can see a lady, a vision, and she's floating across the room, looking down at me, smiles, disappears through the wall, right? And she's got a bun in her hair, and she was about 30 years of age, blonde lady. So I wanted to call up to Ron, and I couldn't, and my heart was pounding and everything. So the next day when he got up, I said, "Ron, I had this vision last night." I said, "I see this woman." And he went to the drawer and he said, "This was her, wasn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, that was her." He said, "That's my wife, Eula." So that convinced me that there was life after death, and I truly believed in that. But many of the poems and things like that has come through. I've written poems, war poems. I've written poems about love, about the mind, about death. So many different aspects, and they're all different characters. There must be at least, I don't know, 12, 14 different intellects throughout the whole of the work. And they're completely different from me. And the styles are different, the personality is different. And what always amazed me was at the speed at which these were written, because they would just start to finish. The perfect piece would come through. Absolutely mind-blowing. And anyone who saw it, they would say, how the hell did that happen? How the hell did you get that wonderful piece of poetry? And I don't say it's a wonderful poetry because I wrote it. I say it's wonderful because I'm the pen for someone who give it to me. And I've never really, tried to find out who gives you the works or anything. They're just, I don't know, they're just amazing pieces of poetry. And to me, that's the magic of the gift, because no one can explain it. No one can explain it. You know what I basically do. Any time, day or night, I can pick up a pen and paper, and I can write, and I will have 200 words or 300 words written in front of me. There's no pause, no punctuation, no grammar, and I have perfect control of that pen. It's not as if I'm being led to do it. It's not automatic writing. It's just at will. And the poetry and philosophy, that comes on when I get the muse come upon me. So, if I really feel strongly I need to write a poem, it will come. And they wrote a book through me. It's called The Book of Prophecy, they told me. And it took 3 months to write, and it's in religious, it's written like a religious book. And I'm not interested in religion at all. So it certainly wasn't my own mind. But that was talking about how the world will become with earthquakes, fires, and hurricanes, and there'll be some places on the earth would be too hot to live. And it does seem that prophecy is coming right now. I'm not one for climate change. I've got to be honest. I'm not one for climate change. But it is quite interesting how that's manifesting, that book. So yeah, and that was done many, many years ago, and I sort of put that away and forgot all about that. And whether it'll ever see the light of day, I don't know. But
they
I
can
don't
see
intend
it's
to
a channel,
write
can't they? They can see, because I feel that they're looking for someone like yourself. I'm not saying they're manipulating you, but they're like you were saying, they're educating you, and they're helping you in your understanding of your place in this world.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that must be quite comforting in a way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I've had two amazing things. People talk about, does if you want to call it spirit or a gift, you call it what you like. I don't mind what anyone calls it. What I basically do, I could demonstrate it now. I'm right. I won't, but I could do 260 words, and it comes from this extraneous source. I can then compare that to writings I've done 30 years ago, and it would be identical. And then whether it's poems or philosophy, you could compare the two, and it's absolutely identical. So that proves it. That proves that it's written at the same speed. So if you say a piece of poetry, and you've just seen me write, and I write in for 2 minutes or a minute, and it's exactly the same, slant and angles and everything, you can tell it's written at the same speed. That must prove that when I did it 30 years ago and I'm doing it now, it's the same source.
Yeah,
It has to, doesn't it?
you're like higher self letting people through, because not everybody's vibrating at the right vibration to connect with the spirit world, but you must be.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting, because people talk about, some people talk about spiritual time, and they say, well, they don't know time. But I can tell you two classic examples of time. One is that I had a dream one night, and in this dream I saw this horse race, and I got given the number 4, and given the name of the horse. The horse was called Tebra, and it was an 8-runner race, and I could see the race play out, and the horse Tebra came from last to first, and I've got a winning ticket in my hand at 11-1, right? This was the night before. The very next day, I get up and I get the Sun newspaper, open it up at the racing section, 2:10 at Newcastle, and I've got it in the book, the press cutting, and 2:10 at Newcastle, number 4, Tedborough, outside Redfield at 11-1. So I put 20 quid on it. The race was exactly how my dream was, right? That was the very next day, okay? And then you got another example where I'm I'm sitting in a flat with my friend Sheila and my friend John, right? And for some reason, I turned to John and I said, John, you've lived many lives before and you've died many violent deaths, but you won't in this one, right? I turned to Sheila, who was about 68 at the time, and I said, I can't say the same for you. And Sheila said, oh, I'm going to bed, you know. Now, Sheila was such a wonderful person. I love Sheila. Um, Such a wonderful spiritual soul. Now, what happened was that Sheila went to bed, and when she went to bed, I said to John, I keep getting fire with her. I can't help it. And anyway, so 17 years later, Sheila died in Grenfell Tower.
Oh my God! How awful!
Yeah, it was she lived on in flat 132 on the 16th floor.
Oh,
So I mean that had as a lot of things have done has had a most profound effect on my life, you know, because you know to actually predict that, what does it tell you? What does it tell you if you've actually predicted it 17 years before it's actually happened?
and also,
It
what can
must be
you do
destiny.
about it? What can you do? Like, you know, it's like, don't ever. I don't know. You can have a fire anywhere.
Well, exactly, and you know, you know, it was a devastating thing because I was laying in bed and I put the radio on and they were talking about, oh, there was a terrible fire in West London, and funny enough, that week I phoned up my son and I said, have you heard from Sheila? Because I haven't heard from her for an awful long time. He said, I haven't heard from her, Dad. And I thought to myself, oh, I don't know where she is now. I only knew her as Sheila. I didn't know her second name. So basically, what happened was that she then, sorry, when I yeah, that was it. When I was laying in bed and they were talking about this terrible fire in West London, and they mentioned Latimer Road, and I thought that's funny because I know Latimer Road, and then they were talking about, oh, you know, Holland Park. So then I ran downstairs and I checked where we used to go and have a coffee, regular as clockwork, in Holland Park. What was it called? Costa's coffee shop. And we used to sit at the table and talk for hours about the Knights Templars, about Shakespeare, and all kinds of things. And basically, I tracked back from that cafe right the way to Sheila's block of flats, and then I realised, and I thought, well, I pray to God that she, you know, she'd already died, she didn't live there, or something had happened. And anyway, a week later, I was on Twitter, and I saw a message from someone called Adam Smith, and he said that his mum was missing, and her name was Sheila, and she was on the 16th floor, and
Oh,
I knew all was lost at
yeah.
that point. Yeah. So you know that was what? Well, that was 6 years ago, I think 5 6 years ago. But you know, nobody can say that you know you don't have the power to predict the future, because I've seen the future, and you know that with my beautiful wife Shona, when I met her, I mean, we've never had a single date. We've been married over 20 years, and all that came from meeting some woman on a train. And I won't go into the story now, but it's on my website. People can have a read of it, and it's in the book. It's an absolutely magical story. You
And
know, absolutely magical. You know, I knew we'd get married. I knew the day we'd get married. I knew the day we'd get engaged, and all this happened within, you know, me seeing her picture. Within 3 months, we got engaged, and within a year and a half, we were married on St George's Day, and we had a wonderful Knights Templar wedding. You know, it was fantastic. So, yeah, televised by BBC and ITV. It was wonderful. Yeah.
and you two run a podcast together as well, which I
Yeah.
just listening every Friday. Well, I know you're having a break from the summer, but it starts
Yeah.
soon, doesn't it? The Allens Investigate, because you cover
Oh,
all
yeah.
kinds of things, and you've had some great guests on, and obviously it's you continuing your quest, but you're truth seekers, aren't you? You're questing all the time. You're trying to.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's all about truth, Debbie. You know, anybody that's on the true spiritual path knows it's about truth. That's the ultimate goal. And we've had a lot of guests on, and some of the guests, you know, may may not have been to our taste. I won't say they were, but anyway. And you know that you know they're not really telling the truth. But you know, we decided that we wouldn't have a show where you tore people to pieces. We wanted them to get their messages out, and then they could get their story out, and it's up to people whether they believe them or not. And we always say to people, do your own research. You know, make sure you research and research and research, and you know, don't believe anything you read in books, or don't believe anything you hear on the TV, and you know, do some research. And then if you read something in a book and then you do some more research and you find out it's true, then that's fantastic.
Yeah,
And that's how
verify
we
for
do it.
yourself. Yeah, because
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
you did one of your last shows before your summer break was all about Marilyn Monroe, which was fantastic, which I know you two are very into her biography and history, and it was interesting to hear a more of a esoteric take on her life.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, I mean that's one of my favorite poems, A Letter to Marilyn Monroe, which people can find on YouTube. I love that, and it's accompanied by film as well of Marilyn. You know, we love Marilyn. I mean, personally, if you ask me, I'd say that Marilyn was probably an agent, if not one agent, a double agent, and an honey trap. But we still love her. We still love Marilyn. You know,
Well, she loved
absolutely
her
beautiful.
esoteric ways. I know she was reading Rudolf Steiner in the last couple of years of her.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I think it was interesting that you know the some of the characters that she got involved with. You know, I mean, she got involved with a communist um, and you know, and other people and the Kennedys and everything. But you know, there is a lot of mystery about whether some people you would say that she never actually died. You know, and she's still alive. Well, I don't know. I have no evidence of that. But she was a beautiful soul, Marilyn, and whatever way, what for whatever faults. I mean, and she was obviously used for much of her life as probably as a honey trap or whatever, and you know, as a lot of Hollywood stars are, they're used, and you know, and in the end, you know, they're wasted as human beings, and they have their soul gets destroyed, doesn't it, and everything. So it's very, very sad.
because
Yeah,
you're
but
a
you know,
believer in the
that's
soul, aren't you? You believe we have
oh,
soul.
absolutely, 100%. And you know what, Debbie? It's like what I believe. This is what I believe through my writing. I believe that when people see me writing, it proves beyond question, right, that the soul, the mind, if you say the mind, is not the way that the medical science believe it is. They believe that body dies, brain dies, mind dies, right?
Wrong.
But I don't. I believe that body dies, body dies, brain dies, but mind continues.
Like
Mind is the
consciousness.
soul.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
consciousness continues.
the consciousness, absolutely. And
Mhm.
you know, I mean, in one of my poems, it talks about the tansy fly, and the tansy fly was eradicated in the last century. And there's no way you could have read about that. You know, it's it's just impossible. You know, and I think some of the things that they've told me, and everyone, and this is a message for everybody, whether you're the greatest skeptic in the world or whatever. I want to tell you, everybody has the sixth sense, and everybody has the ability to heal with their hands, right? Everybody. They ain't nobody that escapes that. It's just they don't understand it. You know, I mean, whether you become a great writer or a great artist or a great poet, or, you know, that is up to maybe the gift that you've given. But you surely will have the gift of healing, and you surely will have the gift of the sixth sense, whether you want it or not. You've
I
got
think
it.
also it's to do with your conscience of whether you want to believe in it first, and also if you're not, let's say, dumbed down by
Oh,
the
absolutely.
outside
Yeah.
world, that's kind of
Well,
thing.
you know what, Debbie? I think I've been really lucky in the fact that I wasn't bombarded at school, and I didn't take it all in, all the information. So I was an empty vessel basically. And then from 33 up to now, when I'm 62, but up to now, I've had such an education. It is beyond your wildest dreams. You know, your learning has been phenomenal, and so you know, it's about teaching others. But I mean, I don't care whether people believe it or they don't believe it. But at the end of the day, you have to come up with an answer to how the writings come about, you know, and because of the quality of the writings and everything, you have to have an answer for it. And if you've got no answer for it, they're clearly not me, and it's clearly they've got different intellect. I mean, I've had people say to me, well, you've got a multi-personality disorder, you know. Well, they're all writers then. They're all philosophers, they're all poets, you know. You know,
And they've all just
it.
suddenly appeared.
Well, exactly, you know, exactly. So I would love nothing more than for, you know, for people to look at the gift, and if they say to me, well, I can't understand it, that'll be enough for me. I can't work it out. I can't work out what this is all about. And, you know, in all the time, and I can remember getting in contact with Christopher French, you know, and
Oh God, I used to go to
Richard
his
Wiseman.
He's such a poo-pooer. He doesn't believe
You know, they
anyway.
don't want to find the, they
No.
don't want the truth. They don't want to
No,
find the truth,
they
do
don't.
they? Honestly.
He
And
refused to
I
look
can
at
remember
it.
I wrote to James Randi. He had this $1 million nonsense
That's one of my
challenge.
favourite bits in your book, actually.
Yeah, and I wrote to him, and he wrote back, and he said, "If you can do what you say, you're a miracle worker. Otherwise, you're a deluded person." Well, what's that all about? You know?
I know he was a very rude man, actually. But it was quite
Yeah, but
interesting that
you
BBC
see, the
documentary
truth
on
is,
him.
yeah, the truth is that they don't want to prove it, because if they prove it, then what does it mean for science? What does it mean for religion?
They don't want to take that big leap. We're actually going to run out of time in a moment. I want to thank
Okay,
you
my
very
darling.
much, Gary. Tell people your website, that you're on Shona's website.
Well, it's yeah, my website is www.thecockneybar.com, or you can also catch us at www.thealchemistfurnace.com, and that's where we sell some bits and bobs. So you can have a look there. Very good site, you know.
I'm going to put the links below anyway. Thank you ever so
Thank
much.
you, Debbie.
Yeah,
thank you, darling. Yeah.
Thank you everyone for listening. I'm going to end the. You stay on, Gary. I think we've still got a minute, and I'll just end this all. Thank you everybody for watching, and go to Gary's website.
Thanks, Debbie. Bye.